Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Josh, my friend, now we have a rule here sometimes when there's not that much gaming news going on. You steer into the fact that there's not that much gaming news going on, and there's a whole bunch of conversations doing the rounds across the industry as to various revenue streams being down across the board. Whether it's Sony, various third-party teams, or even if you go game-specific, the likes of Call of Duty have lost 50 million players in the last year. Now, all of the stuff that we're going to be getting into, you can obviously say, well, we just had the whole pandemic stuff. It's very much still going on, and not in the same capacity as it was across the last couple of years, but gaming playtime and player numbers and subscriber numbers, everything else did spike a lot during the pandemic. So everything I'm about to get into, you can't just say that's because of the pandemic. I think that is going to be the most likely explanation. However, I do think it's a worthwhile talking point as to the industry as it is right now. There's a little bit of a malaise going on, and I want to dissect the malaise, let's say. So game sales overall are down 26% for PlayStation. That's the cumulative amount of units, 63.6 million PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 games back in 2021. That's now down to 47.1 million as of the end of the first quarter, the quarter that we've just had this year. PlayStation Plus subscriber numbers are at 47.3 million, up from 46.3 million at the same point last year, but down from the end of last year, which was 48 million at the end of 2021. Monthly active PlayStation Network users hit 102 million in their the recent business quarter that Sony have just done, but that's down from 105 million at this point last year. Now we are talking, let's say, 3% drops and whatever, but they're millions of people. And for as much as I think it's interesting to say, you know, like I said, the numbers were spiked last year, those people didn't stick around. They didn't think that it was worth keeping the service as it was. Yeah. And there's more stuff that I want to break down. In terms of finishing off the Sony side of things, Sony did say in their financial report that one of the reasons is a lack of first and third party titles. They did say that the demand is there for PlayStation 5, but the supply has been waning. But they do cite the lack of big first party games that they've put out. Gran Turismo 7 and Horizon are mentioned, but I think that's a worthwhile thing to focus on, that they've had a bit of a weird year, and even the rest of this year is God of War, which looks awesome, and The Last of Us remake, which continues to be the most divisive thing in their first party lineup. Naughty Dog tried to get out there and say, look at the comparisons, and people just went, it looks the same.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first party output for Sony this year has been good. Like you said, we've had Gran Turismo, we've had Horizon, we're going to get God of War, which is going to be huge, and I'm looking forward to The Last of Us Part 1. So for me, that's a good portfolio of titles. It's where the third party comes in that I think is where they've really fallen down, because, you know, Sony still makes a lot of money from third party games. You know, when people mostly buy these third parties on PlayStation consoles, they get a big cut of the revenue. But this year, as we are probably going to get into, has had very little in the way of must-play titles since February. I think that's fair to say.
March was the crazy time.
Yeah, exactly. We had the crazy time in February, March, where we had obviously Elden Ring, we had Horizon Zero Dawn, we had a bunch of games, and then over the summer especially, it's been very few and far between. We've got Saints Row at the end of this month, but that's about it until we get into the October crunch. So I can totally see that being a reason why game sales are down, because the games themselves, in a third-party sense, and even in a first-party sense, to an extent, haven't been there.
Well, that's the thing. So to round off the Sony stuff, they're still thinking that they're going to sell 18 million PS5s by the end of the year, which was always a really bold unit sales target to go for. Their report mentioned that they've sold 2.4 million as of the close of June, so that's a hell of a lot more PS5s that they want to get out there. But they do say that they're committed to, you know, making sure that the demand is met by the supply and everything. But to go into the third-party stuff, Square Enix, they're reporting, these are all as of the end of the most recent business quarter. Their digital entertainment wing of Square Enix is down 23.3% year on year, and their operating income is down 17.5% year on year.
Can I just jump in?
You can.
Has Square Enix reported a profit in like 20 years? Like, has Square Enix ever got anything that is beyond or even met their expectations in decades? I don't know. I don't know what they're doing.
The amount of times that they've said, you know, the Hitman, Tomb Raider, whatever it is, where, you know, didn't meet our sales expectations. Yeah. But we'll meet The Quiet Man, and we'll throw out whatever money it is at the Avengers.
Well, that's it. Like, they make good games is what I want to point out there. They've made a lot of great games over the past 2 decades. It's just that, yes, that line of this has come under expectations, it's every single quarter.
The Square Enix side of things, they do mention that Final Fantasy XIV is by and large the thing that is keeping them going, and that is one of their most profitable IP and one of the most profitable installments in that IP. 3, which is just funny because they had that big old mess with the Avengers, and it was Final Fantasy VII Remake that bailed them out that time as well in 2020, when they didn't put their eggs in the right baskets back then too. So yeah, like I said, it's their the digital entertainment wing of the business, which is down 23.3%. Now that includes video games, but it's not entirely video games, but it's still a 23.3% drop is worth talking about. The Xbox side of things, their hardware revenue is down 11% in the most recent quarter, 6% drop in content and services, and a 7% decline in overall gaming revenue. There's a couple more here. Capcom, their digital entertainment sales, again comprising games but including other stuff. Capcom's digital entertainment sales are down 55%, and Capcom's overall revenue is down 48%, which they point out that the Monster Hunter series is still doing very well, and the Monster Hunter Rise DLC is doing very well. But Capcom overall haven't really had a look in. Obviously, we're looking forward to Street Fighter 6.
Yes.
But they could do with some big stuff to come out. Devil May Cry was a long time ago. The other thing to throw in here is game-specific stuff. Call of Duty has lost, like I said at the beginning, 50 million players since this time last year. And I think all of this combined, like I said, there's a bit of a malaise going on, and it is backed up by the data. There's a bit of a slump at the minute.
Scott Telford, if there's one thing that I've taken from everything you've just reeled off, it's that, in the words of Blink-182, things are down, 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 down across the board. And yeah, like you said, a couple of those publisher-specific ones, I do think it probably is down to the fact that they just haven't had any games this year. You mentioned the Monster Hunter DLC, but what else has Capcom put out this year? They're gearing up for Street Fighter 6, yes, but even in terms of continuing Resident Evil 8, that's got a DLC at the end of the year. It's got some other free stuff. We've got support for other Resident Evil games, but we've not got much else. Same in terms of Square Enix. Yes, we were supposed to get Forspoken, and yes, we were supposed to get more from Final Fantasy 16, but since Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't think they've had like a major release at all this year. A lot of the publishers are just kind of sitting out 2021. 2022. Oh my god, of course, this is just 2021 too. And that's because, obviously with the pandemic affecting development, we're finally starting to see the impacts of that, with a lot of games getting delayed to 2023. But yeah, I think that is probably part of the reason, just because these publishers that you've mentioned, with the exception of Sony, haven't had any major release.
Well, that's the thing. I wanted to front load the whole video by saying, you can put all of this just under the pandemic. Some people were going to try gaming, pick up gaming as a hobby, and it just isn't going to be for them. I think the fact that it's in the millions is quite interesting. But overall, when these various reports were posted on social media, or if you go across the Reddit threads for gaming and everything else, there is a general conversation around the viability and the value of the next generation. The idea that so much of the pizzazz around new consoles, for, like this generation, is in frame rates and resolutions. And even if you had the console to buy, you're not rushing out to get one. You're sort of more getting it for the sake of it. And I think that's an interesting talking point as well. I don't know how the comments will take to that, but what do you reckon of the whole the energy around the new consoles?
Yeah, I do think there's a sort of malaise, but I do think that's kind of just because a lot of people can't get the new consoles. That's a reason why PS5 is not selling as well as PS4 did in this same time period. And yeah, we've had a lot of promises that the supply will get better towards the end of the year. Apparently they're figuring out their supply chains and whatnot, but the fact of the matter is the generation hasn't started because production hasn't really started, if that makes sense. And I'm really enjoying having the PlayStation 5, but I almost don't want to say that I'm enjoying having the PlayStation 5 because there's another 100 people in the comments who will tell me they can't get a PlayStation 5, and I feel for them, man, because it shouldn't be this hard, going into the almost third year of this console cycle.
But I think my point, which is very true, my point is that even if you had a PlayStation 5, there is no killer app to get a PlayStation 5 for, which I know you're going to disagree with, but I think that's the interesting part. If you start totting up literal platform console exclusives, generational exclusives, there's Destruction All-Stars, there's Returnal, they're very few and far between.
There is Returnal. And I think that reason is why Microsoft is down as well.
Even the TV doesn't want to keep up with it.
Even the TV doesn't want to keep up
with
it.
We're going to keep going.
Are we going to keep going? We're going to keep going.
Keep going.
Should we stop? Maybe we should stop. So I do disagree to an extent. However, I do think you are right, because I do agree that that's probably why Microsoft is down. They haven't had anything this year. They had Halo Infinite at the end of last year. They had Forza at the end of last year. And for the first half of 2022, they've had no real big release. And the Game Pass itself, we did a video a few months ago about that kind of also not having a clear roadmap until very recently in E3. Well, it's Summer Games Fest, where they kind of laid out the rest of the year and were like, this is coming, this is coming, this is going to be exclusive. This is going to be exclusive. But until then, it was now, man. It was
It's
like
so
6
weird.
months of just kind of hoping they'd have something for the end of the year.
And also, like, you talk about Game Pass, which I think is one of the best plans in business history. I think you look at that and it's been immaculately rolled out. I think you look at the Xbox One generation and they clearly just stepped back and said, okay, how do we plan for the future and go 10 steps ahead? And you're seeing Sony try and compete in that realm with the PlayStation Plus tier stuff. But at the same time, I think that has such an interesting impact on consumer spending habits, because I see so many people and my own friends and everything just say, I'll just wait until it's on Game Pass. Like, why would you bother buying anything day one? Obviously, if it's Xbox exclusive or Xbox branded or whatever, it's on Game Pass anyway. But I think that's trickling through to the third-party stuff. I think a lot of people are hanging back and letting the monthly subscription service be the thing that gets them there anyway, which is goes hand in hand with the fact that a lot of games on day one are nigh on broken or the worst version of that game anyway, as is evidenced by the likes of Cyberpunk or whatever. I think it speaks to a mentality across the game-playing public that is interesting to dissect. You know, are you as excited about video games or gaming as you used to be?
That's an existential point, that, Scott. I think you are. I mean, again, you know, there's so much to go into this. Like, there's so many different factors as to why things are down, or even while the malaise is there. One is, of course, the lack of games. Two is, of course, the way games are becoming homogenized and the lack of surprises in the AAA space, especially. And then there's the fact that we've all just come out of lockdowns and the summer is happening for the first time in 2 years, and everyone wants to get out the house.
Iced coffee's so good.
Iced coffee's so good.
So good.
Movies are also back. The movie business is starting to get there. Top Gun made $1 billion, my friend. Things are starting to get there. One really good movie.
So good.
But you know, the point is that that's now an option. I just think there's so much to take into account here that it's kind of like overwhelming, and I think it's going to be a good few years before we can pinpoint any one thing to explain this is the reason for this trend. Because at the moment, in my like kind of non-professional opinion, there are so many reasons for this trend.
No, there are, and I think that was the only reason to do this kind of video, was to have a conversation or open up a dialogue and try and address the elephant in the room, which is, you know, are you guys feeling it too, or is there that overall conversation on, like, should things feel better in terms of the way the industry is operating? How much can you just put underneath the pandemic side of things, and how much is business plan stuff? Is the fact that the likes of The Last of Us remake is being greenlit or whatever, and the conversations that come from all those things. So let us know what you think down in the comments below as to how you're getting on in the reality of the industry of gaming. And for now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
That was barely an ending, but we'll catch you next time.
It certainly was.
See ya.
Bye.